The morning sun barely peeked through the gray clouds as Marcus Williams sat on the cold concrete steps of the old library building. His weathered hands clutched a small paper cup that held exactly $8.73, every penny he had managed to collect over the past 3 days. The coins clinked softly as he shifted his position, trying to find some warmth against the brick wall behind him. Marcus had been living on the streets of downtown Portland for almost 2 years now. At 54 years old, he never imagined his life would take such a dramatic turn. Just 3 years ago, he had been working as a maintenance supervisor at a local manufacturing plant, living in a modest apartment and sending money to his elderly mother in Ohio. Then the plant closed. His savings disappeared during months of unemployment, and a series of unfortunate events led him to lose his apartment. Despite his circumstances, Marcus maintained a dignity that impressed those who took the time to notice him. He always kept himself as clean as possible, washing in public restrooms and keeping his few belongings organized in an old backpack his daughter had given him years ago. His graying beard was neatly trimmed when he could manage it, and he always said thank you to anyone who offered help. Whether it was spare change or just a kind word, the library steps had become his regular spot during the day. The building offered some shelter from wind and rain, and the librarians had never asked him to leave as long as he wasn't causing trouble. Mrs. Henderson, the head librarian, sometimes brought him a cup of coffee on particularly cold days, though she always did it quietly without making a scene. On this particular Tuesday morning, Marcus was counting his money again, planning his day carefully. $8.73 would buy him a small meal and maybe a hot coffee. He had learned to make every penny count, knowing that some days brought no donations at all. The breakfast sandwich from the corner deli cost $3.50, and he could get a large coffee for $2. That would leave him with just over $3 for the rest of the day. As he sat there planning, Marcus watched the morning rush of people hurrying to work. Office workers in pressed suits walked briskly past, most avoiding eye contact. A few regulars had gotten used to seeing him and would nod or smile. There was Jennifer, the young nurse who worked at the hospital nearby, who sometimes stopped to chat about the weather. And there was Mr. Peterson, the retired teacher who always carried dog treats for the stray animals in the neighborhood and occasionally shared them with Marcus to feed a skinny tabby cat that had started following him around. The city was slowly waking up around him. Store owners were raising their metal security gates. The aroma of fresh bread drifted from the bakery across the street, and delivery trucks rumbled past on their morning routes. Marcus had become a quiet observer of this daily rhythm, noticing details that busy people missed, like how the old man from the flower shop always watered the small plants outside his store, with a care that suggested each one mattered deeply. Around 9 o'clock, Marcus noticed something unusual. A young woman was standing near the bus stop, frantically searching through her purse. She appeared to be in her early 20s, dressed in a simple work uniform that suggested she might be a waitress or shop assistant. Her face showed increasing panic as she emptied her purse onto the ground, checking every pocket and compartment. Marcus watched as she approached several people at the bus stop, clearly asking for help. He could see them shaking their heads and turning away. The woman looked at her phone, checking the time, and her distress became more obvious. She was clearly going to be late for something important. Finally, the bus arrived. Marcus watched as the other passengers boarded, showing their passes or dropping coins into the fare box. The young woman approached the driver, gesturing helplessly. Even from a distance, Marcus could see the driver shaking his head. The woman stepped back and the bus pulled away, leaving her standing alone on the sidewalk. She sat down heavily on the bench, put her head in her hands, and began to cry. The sight tugged at Marcus's heart in a way that surprised him. He had seen plenty of human suffering during his time on the streets, and he had learned to protect himself emotionally. But something about this young woman's obvious desperation moved him deeply. Marcus stood up slowly, his joints stiff from sitting on the cold concrete. He walked over to where the woman sat, his footsteps quiet on the sidewalk. As he approached, she looked up, her eyes red from crying. "Excuse me, miss," Marcus said gently, his voice roughened by too many cold nights but still kind. "I couldn't help but notice you seem to be having some trouble. Is everything all right?" The woman looked startled to be approached by someone who was clearly homeless, but something in Marcus's tone made her respond honestly. "I lost my wallet," she said, her voice shaky. I was supposed to start a new job today at the medical center, and I needed bus fare to get there. I've been looking for work for months, and this was my chance. And now I'm going to miss it because I can't even afford the $2 bus fare. Marcus listened carefully, understanding the weight of what she was telling him. A new job meant everything when you had nothing. It meant hope, independence, and the chance to build a life. He knew exactly how precious that opportunity was, and how crushing it would be to lose it over something as simple as bus fare. Without hesitation, Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out his small paper cup. The coins clinked as he poured them into his weathered palm, counting quickly. He picked out 8 quarters and walked back to the young woman. "Here," he said, holding out the money. "This should cover your bus fare both ways and maybe a coffee to calm your nerves before you start your new job." The young woman stared at the coins in Marcus's outstretched hand, her mouth opening in surprise. For a moment, she seemed unable to process what was happening. Here was a man who clearly had nothing, offering her what appeared to be his last money. I can't take this," she stammered, looking from the coins to Marcus's worn clothing and then to his kind but tired eyes. "You need this more than I do. I can see that you're—" She stopped, not wanting to state the obvious about his homeless situation. Marcus smiled gently, a warmth spreading across his weathered face. "Miss, I've been where you are. I know what it's like when one missed opportunity can change everything. This job could be the start of something good for you. Take it." "But this looks like all the money you have," she protested, tears starting fresh in her eyes, though now they seemed to be from a different emotion entirely. "It is," Marcus admitted honestly, "but money comes and goes. A chance like this might not come again. Besides, I've learned that sometimes the only way to feel rich is to give what little you have to someone who needs it more." The woman looked at him with wonder, as if she couldn't believe such kindness existed in the world. "What's your name?" she asked softly. "Marcus Williams," he replied, still holding out the money. "I'm Sarah Chen," she said, finally reaching out to accept the coins. As her fingers touched his palm, she could feel how rough his hands were from life on the streets, and how cold they felt in the morning air. "Marcus, I promise I'll pay you back. As soon as I get my first paycheck, I'll come find you and give you this money back, plus more." Marcus chuckled softly. "You don't owe me anything, Sarah. Just do good work at your new job, and when you're able, maybe help someone else who needs it. That's how kindness works. It doesn't come back to you, it goes forward to someone else." Sarah stood up, clutching the coins tightly. "I don't know how to thank you enough. You don't even know me, and you've just saved my entire future." "Go on now," Marcus said, gesturing toward the approaching bus. "You don't want to be late on your first day." Sarah hesitated for one more moment, then impulsively reached out and hugged Marcus. He was surprised by the gesture but returned it gently. "Thank you," she whispered. "You're an angel." As the bus pulled up, Sarah ran toward it, turning back once to wave at Marcus before boarding. Through the window, she could see her watching him as the bus pulled away, her hand pressed against the glass in a final gesture of gratitude. Marcus walked slowly back to the library steps, his cup now containing only 73 cents. He sat down and looked at the remaining coins. Not enough for breakfast, not even enough for a cup of coffee. His stomach rumbled, reminding him that he hadn't eaten since the previous evening when he'd found half a sandwich someone had left on a park bench. But instead of feeling regret about giving away his money, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in a long time, a deep sense of satisfaction. The look on Sarah's face, the relief and hope in her eyes was worth more than any breakfast. He had made a real difference in someone's life, and that feeling was something no amount of money could buy. As the morning progressed, Marcus noticed that people seemed different somehow. Maybe it was his imagination, but the smiles from passers-by seemed warmer, the nods more genuine. Mrs. Henderson emerged from the library with not 1 but 2 cups of coffee, sitting down beside him on the steps. "Beautiful morning, isn't it, Marcus?" she said, handing him one of the cups. "Yes, ma'am, it certainly is," Marcus replied, grateful for the warmth of both the coffee and the companionship. "I saw what you did for that young woman," Mrs. Henderson said quietly. "That was a beautiful thing." Marcus looked surprised. "You saw that?" "I was opening up the library and happened to look out. I've been working here for 30 years and I've seen a lot of people come and go. But I've never seen anything quite like what you just did." She paused, sipping her coffee. It takes a special kind of person to give their last dollar to a stranger. She needed it more than I did, Marcus said simply. Maybe, Mrs. Henderson said. But not everyone would have seen it that way. Most people would have held on to that money, especially in your situation. As they sat together in comfortable silence, Marcus reflected on how different his life had become. 2 years ago, he would have measured his worth by his salary, his apartment, his possessions. Now he had none of those things, yet this morning he felt richer than he had in years. Around noon, Marcus decided to walk around the neighborhood, despite his empty stomach. Movement helped distract from hunger, and he enjoyed observing the life of the city. He walked past Sarah's bus stop, wondering how her first day was going, hoping she was doing well. As he passed the small corner market where he sometimes bought food, the owner, Mr. Rodriguez, called out to him, "Marcus, come here, my friend." Marcus approached the store, and Mr. Rodriguez gestured him inside. "I heard about what you did this morning," he said with a broad smile. "My wife's cousin works at the medical center, and that young lady you helped came in talking about the kind man who saved her job. She was asking everyone if they knew you." Marcus was surprised that word had already gotten around. She didn't need to tell anyone about that. "Are you kidding?" Mr. Rodriguez laughed. "A story like that spreads fast. People need to hear about good things happening in the world." He reached under the counter and pulled out a sandwich wrapped in paper. "This is for you, no charge. Anyone with a heart as big as yours deserves a good meal." Marcus accepted the sandwich gratefully, touched by the unexpected kindness. As he unwrapped it, the aroma made his mouth water. Turkey and cheese with fresh vegetables. The kind of substantial meal he hadn't enjoyed in weeks. "Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez, this means more than you know." "Thank you, Marcus. People like you remind the rest of us what really matters." As Marcus ate his sandwich on the steps of the library, he couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted in his world. The act of giving away his last money hadn't left him poorer, somehow. It seemed to have opened a door to connections and kindness he hadn't expected. He had no way of knowing that across town, Sarah was telling everyone she met about the homeless man who had saved her future, or that her story was already beginning to spread beyond the medical center where she now worked. The next 3 days passed quietly for Marcus, following the familiar rhythm he had established during his months on the streets. He woke each morning as the sun rose, folded the cardboard he used for insulation, and tucked it safely in his backpack. The sandwich from Mr. Rodriguez had sustained him well, but by Thursday morning, his stomach was beginning to remind him that he needed to find more food soon. His 73 cents wouldn't buy much, but Marcus had learned to be resourceful. The downtown area had several churches that served meals on different days of the week, and he knew the schedule by heart. Thursday was St. Mary's lunch service, which meant he could get a hot meal if he arrived early enough. The volunteers there were always kind, treating everyone with dignity regardless of their circumstances. As Marcus walked the 6 blocks to St. Mary's, he noticed something unusual. People were looking at him differently than they had before. Not with the usual mixture of pity and discomfort he had grown accustomed to, but with something that looked almost like recognition. A woman waiting for the bus smiled and nodded at him as if they were old friends. A businessman walking past actually made eye contact and said, "Good morning." At St. Mary's, the volunteer coordinator, Mrs. Garcia, greeted him with unusual enthusiasm. "Marcus, there you are. We've been hoping you'd come by." "Good afternoon, Mrs. Garcia," Marcus replied, puzzled by her excited tone. "I hope I'm not too late for lunch." "Too late? Never." She gestured for him to follow her. "Come with me. There's someone who wants to meet you." Marcus followed her through the community room where other people were eating their meals, past the kitchen where volunteers were cleaning up, and into a small office he had never seen before. Sitting at a desk was a middle-aged man with a notepad and a digital recorder. "Marcus, this is Tom Bradley from Channel 8 News," Mrs. Garcia explained. "Someone contacted the station about a story, and Tom has been looking all over the city for you." Marcus felt a flutter of anxiety in his chest. He had always tried to stay out of trouble and avoid attention. "Is something wrong? Have I done something?" Tom Bradley stood up with a warm smile and extended his hand. "Mr. Williams, you haven't done anything wrong. Quite the opposite, actually. I'm here because of something very right that you did." Still confused, Marcus shook the reporter's hand. Tom gestured for him to sit down, and Mrs. Garcia quietly left the room, closing the door behind her. "Mr. Williams, Do you remember helping a young woman named Sarah Chen on Tuesday morning? She was having trouble with bus fare for a new job. Marcus nodded slowly. Yes, I remember Sarah. I hope she's doing well at her job. She's doing wonderfully thanks to you, Tom said, opening his notepad. But more than that, she's been telling everyone about what you did. The story reached someone at the medical center who knows a producer at our station. When we heard about a homeless man giving his last $8 to help a stranger get to work, we knew we had to find you. Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his chair. I don't understand why that would be news. People help each other all the time. Tom leaned forward, his expression earnest. Mr. Williams, when was the last time someone gave you their last $8? The question caught Marcus off guard. He thought about all the people who had passed him on the street, the thousands of faces that had looked away rather than acknowledge his existence. Even the people who had helped him, Mrs. Henderson with coffee, Mr. Rodriguez with a sandwich, had been giving from their abundance, not from their need. I see your point, Marcus said quietly. Sarah Chen told us that you said money comes and goes, but opportunities might not come again. She said you told her that the only way to feel rich is to give what little you have to someone who needs it more. Tom consulted his notes. Those are profound words from someone who has every reason to hold on to what little he has. Marcus looked down at his hands. I just did what felt right. Sarah was in trouble and I was able to help. It's not complicated. That's exactly what makes it remarkable, Tom said. You didn't think twice about it, did you? You saw someone in need, and you gave them everything you had. Over the next hour, Tom asked Marcus questions about his life, his circumstances, and his philosophy. Marcus found himself opening up about his journey from stable employment to homelessness, the daily challenges he faced, and the small kindnesses that had kept him going. He spoke about the importance of maintaining dignity, about finding purpose even in the most difficult circumstances, and about his belief that everyone deserves compassion. What many people don't realize, Marcus explained, is that being homeless doesn't mean you stop being human. You still have feelings, hopes, dreams. You still want to matter, to make a difference somehow. When I helped Sarah, I felt like myself again. Not just someone society has forgotten, but someone who could actually help another person. As the interview concluded, Tom asked if he could arrange for a cameraman to film a follow-up piece. Marcus hesitated, not comfortable with the idea of being on television. But Tom assured him that the story could help change how people think about homelessness. Sometimes, Tom said, people need to be reminded that kindness exists, especially kindness that comes from unexpected places. Your story could inspire others. After Tom left, Marcus remained in the small office for a few minutes, processing what had just happened. Mrs. Garcia returned with a plate of food, the lunch he had come for in the first place. This is all quite overwhelming, Marcus admitted as she sat down across from him. I imagine it is, Mrs. Garcia said kindly. But you should know that this story has already started spreading beyond just the news station. Sarah Chen has been posting about you on social media. She works at the medical center now, and she's told all her co-workers. The story is beginning to take on a life of its own. Marcus ate his meal slowly, thinking about the implications of what Mrs. Garcia had told him. He had always preferred to live quietly, without drawing attention to himself. The idea that strangers might be talking about him, that his personal story might become public, made him deeply uncomfortable. That evening, as Marcus settled into his usual sleeping spot in a covered doorway behind the library, he found it difficult to rest. He kept thinking about the reporter's questions, about Sarah's gratitude, about the way people had been looking at him differently. He didn't know that across the city, Sarah Chen was at her computer, typing a detailed post about the man who had changed her life. She had included every detail she could remember about their encounter, describing not just Marcus's generosity, but his dignity, his kindness, and his wisdom. She had posted it on multiple social media platforms, and it was already being shared by her friends and coworkers. In her post, Sarah had written, "A homeless man gave me his last $8 so I wouldn't miss my first day at a new job. When I tried to refuse, he said, 'Money comes and goes, but a chance like this might not come again.' This stranger saved my future, asking nothing in return." His name is Marcus Williams, and he sits by the downtown library most days. He restored my faith in human kindness. By midnight, Sarah's post had been shared over 100 times. By morning, It would reach thousands of people, many of whom would begin making plans to find the kind homeless man who had given his last dollar to help a stranger. Marcus woke Friday morning to an unusual sound, hushed voices and the clicking of camera equipment. He opened his eyes slowly, disoriented by the unfamiliar sound so early in the morning. As his vision cleared, he saw several people standing nearby, including Tom Bradley and a cameraman. "Good morning, Mr. Williams," Tom said softly, clearly trying not to startle him. "I'm sorry to wake you so early, but something extraordinary has happened overnight." Marcus sat up slowly, gathering his bearings. The morning was still dim, with only the first hints of sunrise beginning to lighten the sky. "What's going on?" "The story about you has exploded on social media," Tom explained excitedly. "Sarah Chen's post about your kindness has been shared over 10,000 times since yesterday evening. People are calling you the angel of downtown Portland. Our news station's phones have been ringing all night with people asking how they can help you." Marcus rubbed his eyes, trying to process this information. "I don't understand." "What do you mean, help me?" Tom pulled out his phone and showed Marcus the screen. "Look at this." He scrolled through hundreds of comments on Sarah's post. People from all over the city, and even from other states, were expressing their amazement at Marcus's generosity. Many were asking where they could find him to offer assistance. "This can't be real," Marcus said, staring at the screen in disbelief. "It's very real," Tom assured him. "And there's more. Our station aired a brief segment about your story on last night's late news. By this morning, it had been picked up by 3 other local stations and 2 national news websites. People everywhere are talking about the homeless man who gave his last $8 to help a stranger." As if summoned by their conversation, Marcus noticed people beginning to approach from different directions. A woman in a business suit was walking toward them, carrying a large coffee and what appeared to be breakfast. A man in work clothes was coming from the other direction with a bag that looked like it might contain clothing. Behind them, Marcus could see at least a dozen other people, all heading toward their location. "Mr. Williams," Tom continued, "I need to ask you something important. All of these people want to help you, but we want to make sure we handle this respectfully. Are you comfortable with meeting some of them? We can ask them to give you space if you prefer." Marcus looked at the approaching crowd, feeling overwhelmed. In 2 years of homelessness, he had grown accustomed to being invisible, to being overlooked and ignored. The idea that this many people wanted to acknowledge him, much less help him, was almost incomprehensible. I don't know what to say to them," he admitted. "Just be yourself," Tom suggested. "That's what made this story so powerful in the first place." The first person to reach them was Maria Santos, a nurse from the same medical center where Sarah worked. She approached Marcus with a gentle smile and an armful of supplies. "Mr. Williams," she said warmly, "my name is Maria. I work with Sarah Chen, and she told everyone at the hospital about what you did for her. I brought you some things I thought you might need." She handed him a thermos of hot coffee, a bag containing sandwiches and fruit, and a warm winter jacket that looked like it would fit him perfectly. "Sarah said you gave her hope when she had none. I wanted to give you something in return." Before Marcus could fully express his gratitude to Maria, another person approached. This was David Kim, a local business owner who had seen the news story. "Sir," David said, extending his hand to Marcus, "I own a small restaurant downtown. Sarah's post about you was shared by one of my employees, and I had to come meet you myself. What you did, it reminds me why I came to this country in the first place, why I believe in the goodness of people." David handed Marcus an envelope. "There's enough money in here for you to stay in a decent hotel for a week with meals included. It's not much, but I wanted to do something." One by one, more people approached. There was Jennifer, the nurse Marcus recognized from her daily walks past the library. She brought toiletries and a gift card for groceries. There was Mrs. Patterson, a retired teacher who had brought books, saying she remembered that Marcus often sat near the library and thought he might enjoy reading. A group of college students had pooled their money to buy him new shoes and socks. But perhaps most touching was when an elderly man named Robert approached, walking slowly with a cane. He sat down next to Marcus on the library steps, breathing heavily from the effort. "Son," Robert said, his voice shaky with age, "I've been homeless myself. 20 years ago, after my wife died and I lost my job, I spent 8 months living on the streets. I remember what it was like to have nothing, and I remember the few people who showed me kindness during that time." Robert reached into his pocket and pulled out a small envelope. I'm on a fixed income now, Social Security and a small pension, but I managed to save up $200. I want you to have it because someone like you, someone who gives their last dollar to a stranger, that's someone worth investing in. By mid-morning, more than 50 people had come to find Marcus. The scene had become so busy that police officers arrived to help manage the crowd and ensure everyone's safety. The officers, however, were not there to disperse the gathering. Instead, Officer Patricia Williams, no relation to Marcus, despite sharing his last name, had brought her own contribution. Mr. Williams, Officer Patricia said, I've been a police officer for 15 years, and I've seen a lot of people during their worst moments, but I've also seen acts of kindness that restore my faith in humanity. What you did for Sarah Chen is one of those acts. She handed him a folder. I've been making some calls this morning. There are several organizations in the city that provide services for people experiencing homelessness, and I've compiled information about all of them. Job placement services, temporary housing programs, healthcare resources, everything you might need to get back on your feet, if that's what you want. As the morning progressed, Tom Bradley and his cameraman documented the incredible outpouring of support. Local business owners offered Marcus job opportunities. A dentist volunteered free dental care. A barber offered free haircuts and grooming services. Someone from a local church extended an invitation to stay in their emergency shelter, not just for a night, but for as long as he needed. Most remarkably, people kept arriving. By noon, the crowd had grown to over 100 people, all wanting to meet Marcus and offer some form of assistance. The story had continued spreading on social media throughout the morning, with people sharing not just Sarah's original post, but photos and videos of the ongoing gathering at the library. Marcus found himself overwhelmed by the generosity and kindness being shown to him. Each person who approached had a genuine desire to help, and many shared their own stories of times when someone's kindness had made a difference in their lives. He began to understand that his simple act of giving Sarah his last $8 had touched something deeper in people, a need to believe in goodness, to participate in kindness, to be part of something meaningful. I never expected anything like this, Marcus told Tom during a quiet moment between visitors. I just helped one person. How did it become this? Tom smiled, gesturing at the continuing stream of people coming to offer assistance. Sometimes one act of kindness creates a ripple effect. You reminded people that generosity and compassion still exist in the world. In return, they want to show you the same kindness you showed Sarah. As the afternoon approached, Marcus realized that his life was about to change in ways he could never have imagined. The $8 he had given away had somehow brought him more than money could ever buy. It had brought him a community of people who cared about his well-being and wanted to help him rebuild his life. By Saturday morning, Marcus's story had reached far beyond Portland. National news networks had picked up the local story, and social media posts about the homeless angel were being shared across the country. The hashtag #Marcus Williams was trending on multiple platforms, with people sharing their own stories of unexpected kindness and tagging friends to spread awareness. The Portland police had to establish an organized system for managing the continuous stream of people arriving at the library to meet Marcus and offer help. Officer Patricia Williams had become an unofficial coordinator, working with library staff and volunteers to ensure that the overwhelming response could be handled safely and respectfully. Mr. Williams, Officer Patricia explained as she sat with Marcus in the library's community room, we've had to set up a proper donation center. The amount of money, clothing, food, and other items people are bringing is beyond anything we've ever seen. She showed him a list on her tablet. So far, we've documented visits from over 300 people who've come specifically to help you. 300, Marcus. That's why people are calling them your angels. 300 angels who appeared because of your kindness to Sarah. Marcus stared at the number, unable to fully comprehend it. 300 individuals had taken time from their lives, spent their own money, and traveled to downtown Portland because they were moved by his simple act of helping a stranger. The offers of assistance had grown far beyond anyone's expectations. Local businesses were competing to offer Marcus employment. A construction company owner named James Peterson had offered him a full-time maintenance position with full benefits, plus an advance on his salary to help him get established. A local apartment complex owner had offered him a rent-free studio apartment for 6 months, A credit union had set up an account in his name and was managing the monetary donations, which had grown to over $12,000. But it wasn't just the practical offers that moved Marcus deeply. People had written him hundreds of letters, sharing personal stories of times when kindness had changed their lives. Children had drawn him pictures and written thank you notes in crayon. A local elementary school had made him a giant card signed by every student, declaring him their kindness hero. Dr. Amanda Foster, a physician who had been following the story online, had arranged for Marcus to receive comprehensive medical care. Mr. Williams, she explained during their consultation, living without proper shelter takes a toll on your body. I want to make sure you're healthy as you begin this new chapter of your life. The medical examination revealed that Marcus was in remarkably good health considering his circumstances, though he needed dental work and treatment for some minor conditions that had developed during his time on the streets. Dr. Foster had coordinated with other healthcare professionals who volunteered their services, ensuring Marcus would receive all necessary care at no cost. Perhaps most emotionally significant was when Marcus received a phone call that Officer Patricia facilitated. It was his daughter Rebecca calling from Denver. "Dad?" Her voice was shaky with emotion. "Dad, I've been trying to find you for months. I saw the news story about you online and I couldn't believe it when I realized it was my father they were talking about." Marcus's hands trembled as he held the phone. He hadn't spoken to Rebecca in over a year, too ashamed of his circumstances to maintain contact. "Becca, is it really you?" "It's me, Dad, and I'm so proud of you. What you did for that young woman. That's exactly the kind of man you've always been. You taught me to help others when I was growing up, and you're still doing it even when you have nothing." Through tears, Rebecca explained that she had been searching for her father since losing touch with him. She had contacted shelters and organizations, filed missing person reports, and never stopped hoping to find him. "I'm driving to Portland right now," she said. "I'll be there tomorrow morning. I'm bringing my son, your grandson, to meet you. He's 8 years old, Dad, and he wants to meet his grandfather." The reunion with Rebecca and his grandson, Tyler, was scheduled for Sunday morning at the library. Mrs. Henderson had arranged for them to use a private room for their meeting, understanding that this would be an emotional moment that deserved privacy. Meanwhile, the community response continued to grow. A local television station organized a special broadcast called 300 Angels: How Portland Came Together, documenting the incredible outpouring of support for Marcus. The broadcast featured interviews with many of the people who had come to help him, each explaining what motivated them to get involved. Sarah Chen, whose original social media post had started everything, was interviewed as the central figure in the story. "Marcus saved my future when he gave me his last $8, she said, tears in her eyes. "But what I didn't realize at the time was that his kindness would save so many other people too. Look at what's happened. Hundreds of people have come together to help someone in need. Marcus didn't just help me. He reminded an entire community about the power of compassion." The response had extended beyond individual acts of kindness. Local organizations had been inspired to expand their services for homeless individuals. The city council announced new funding for homeless services, directly citing Marcus's story as motivation for increased support. Several businesses had committed to hiring people experiencing homelessness, recognizing that circumstances don't define a person's character or value. A particularly moving moment came when a group of homeless individuals from various parts of the city came together to meet Marcus. They had heard about his story and wanted to express their gratitude for how he had represented their community. "Brother," said a man named Christopher, speaking for the group, "you showed the world that being homeless doesn't mean being heartless. You proved that we're still human, still capable of love and generosity. Thank you for reminding people that we matter." Marcus was deeply moved by this visit. Throughout his experience of homelessness, he had sometimes struggled with feelings of shame and worthlessness. But seeing how his story had changed perceptions and inspired compassion gave new meaning to the difficult period of his life. As Saturday evening approached, Marcus reflected on the incredible transformation that had occurred in just 1 week. The man who had given away his last $8 was now surrounded by an abundance of support and opportunity that he could never have imagined. But more than the material assistance, he was overwhelmed by the reminder that goodness existed in the world on a scale he had forgotten was possible. Tom Bradley, who had been documenting the ongoing story, sat with Marcus in the quiet library as the day's visitors concluded their meetings. "How are you processing all of this?" Tom asked. Marcus was quiet for a long moment before responding. "I keep thinking about something someone told me years ago, that kindness is like a seed. You plant it and you never know what will grow. When I helped Sarah, I thought I was just planting a small seed. I had no idea it would become a forest." He looked around at the boxes of donations, the letters and cards, the flowers and gifts that had accumulated. All of this came from one moment of trying to do the right thing. It makes me wonder how many other moments like that we miss. How many opportunities we have every day to plant seeds of kindness. As Marcus prepared for what would be his last night of sleeping outside, he felt a mixture of gratitude, amazement, and hope that he hadn't experienced in years. Tomorrow he would reunite with his daughter and meet his grandson. Next week he would start a new job and move into his own apartment. But tonight, he simply marveled at how one small act of giving had brought 300 angels into his life. Sunday morning arrived with the kind of clear, bright sunlight that seemed to promise new beginnings. Marcus woke in the small hotel room that David Kim had provided, marveling at the simple luxury of a real bed, clean sheets, and a private bathroom. It was his first night indoors in almost 2 years, and the experience felt both wonderful and slightly surreal. He showered and dressed in the new clothes that had been donated to him. Clean jeans, a button-down shirt, and the warm jacket Maria had given him. Looking in the mirror, he barely recognized himself. The man staring back at him looked dignified, hopeful, and ready for whatever came next. At 10 o'clock, Marcus walked to the library where Mrs. Henderson was waiting for him. "Your daughter called," she said with a warm smile. "She's about 20 minutes away." She sounded so excited, Marcus. "Are you ready for this?" Marcus took a deep breath. "I think so. It's been so long since I've seen Rebecca, and I've never met Tyler. I'm nervous about what they'll think of everything that's happened." "They'll think what everyone else thinks," Mrs. Henderson assured him, "that you're a good man who deserves all the wonderful things that are happening to you." When Rebecca's car pulled up in front of the library, Marcus felt his heart racing. Through the passenger window, he could see his daughter, now 32 years old, looking so much like her mother. In the back seat was a young boy with curious eyes pressing his face against the window. Rebecca stepped out of the car, and for a moment, father and daughter simply looked at each other. Then she ran toward him, and Marcus opened his arms to embrace the child he hadn't seen in over a year. They held each other tightly, both crying with relief and joy. "Dad," Rebecca whispered, "I've missed you so much. When you stopped answering my calls, I was so worried. I didn't know if something had happened to you." "I was ashamed," Marcus admitted. "I didn't want you to know how far I had fallen. I thought I was protecting you from my problems." "You're my father," Rebecca said firmly. "Your problems are my problems. We're family, and family doesn't give up on each other." Tyler had climbed out of the car and was standing nearby, watching this reunion with wide eyes. Rebecca took Marcus's hand and led him over to his grandson. "Tyler," she said gently, "this is your grandfather, Marcus." The 8-year-old looked up at Marcus with frank curiosity. "Are you really the man everyone is calling a hero?" Marcus knelt down to Tyler's eye level. "I'm not a hero, Tyler. I just tried to help someone who needed it." "Mom says that's what heroes do," Tyler replied seriously. "They help people even when it's hard for them." The simple wisdom of the child's words touched Marcus deeply. He realized that Tyler was right in his own way. Heroism wasn't about grand gestures or superhuman abilities. It was about choosing to help others even when you have little to give. Over the next few hours, Marcus, Rebecca, and Tyler spent time together in the library's community room, catching up on 2 years of missed conversations. Rebecca told her father about Tyler's school activities, her job as a nurse in Denver, and her plans to possibly relocate to Portland to be closer to him. Tyler showed his grandfather the drawings he had made during the car ride, pictures of angels helping people, inspired by the story he had heard about his grandfather. "Dad," Rebecca said as they shared lunch together, "I want you to know that I'm proud of what you did for Sarah Chen, but I'm also proud of how you handled yourself during these difficult years. It couldn't have been easy, but you maintained your dignity and your compassion. That tells me everything about who you are as a person." The afternoon brought a steady stream of visitors to the library. people who had heard that Marcus would be meeting with his family and wanted to pay their respects. Sarah Chen arrived with flowers and a card signed by everyone at the medical center where she worked. She brought news that the center was starting a program to provide bus passes for people in job transition situations, directly inspired by her experience with Marcus. James Peterson, the construction company owner who had offered Marcus employment, came by to finalize the details of his job offer. "Mr. Williams," James said, "I want you to know that this job offer isn't charity. I've been in construction for 30 years and I can tell when someone has the character and work ethic I need on my team. Your actions this past week prove you have both." Marcus would start work the following Monday as a maintenance supervisor, essentially the same type of position he had held before becoming homeless. The job came with health insurance, retirement benefits, and the opportunity for advancement based on performance. The apartment that had been offered to him was in a modest but well-maintained building just a few blocks from the library. The building manager, Linda Chen, no relation to Sarah, had prepared a furnished studio apartment complete with kitchen supplies, bedding, and even some groceries to get him started. As evening approached, the 3 generations of Marcus's family prepared to spend their first night together in his new apartment. Rebecca had decided to stay for a week to help her father get settled, while Tyler was excited about the prospect of sleeping on an air mattress in his grandfather's living room. Before leaving the library, Marcus took a moment to speak with Mrs. Henderson privately. "I want to thank you for everything you've done, not just this week but all the mornings when you brought me coffee, all the times you treated me with kindness when others looked through me as if I didn't exist." Mrs. Henderson smiled with tears in her eyes. "Marcus, watching your story unfold has been one of the most beautiful things I've experienced in my 30 years working here. You've reminded all of us why kindness matters." As they prepared to leave, Tom Bradley arrived for one final interview. The story had now reached international attention, with news outlets around the world reporting on the Portland miracle, how one homeless man's $8 act of kindness had inspired an entire community to come together in support. "Mr. Williams," Tom said, setting up his camera one last time, "your story has been shared with millions of people around the world. What do you hope people take away from what happened here?" Marcus thought carefully before responding. "I hope people understand that kindness doesn't require wealth or status. Some of the most generous people I've met have been those who have very little, and I hope people realize that everyone matters. That homeless person you pass on the street, that struggling single mother in line ahead of you at the grocery store, that elderly person sitting alone in the park, everyone has value, and everyone deserves compassion." He paused, looking at his daughter and grandson. "Most importantly, I hope people understand that kindness always comes back to you, but not always in the way you expect. I gave away $8 and got my family back. I helped one stranger and discovered a community of 300 angels. That's how kindness really works. It multiplies in ways you can never predict." 6 months later, Marcus was thriving in his new life. He had been promoted to assistant supervisor at the construction company and was saving money to bring Rebecca and Tyler to Portland permanently. He volunteered regularly at St. Mary's, serving meals to homeless individuals and sharing his story with anyone who needed hope. The Marcus Williams Kindness Fund had been established at a local bank, providing small emergency grants to people in crisis situations. The fund had helped dozens of people avoid eviction, get transportation to job interviews, or access other basic necessities during difficult times. Sarah Chen had become like a daughter to Marcus, visiting him regularly and bringing updates about her success at the medical center. She had started a support group for people transitioning from unemployment to work, providing both practical assistance and emotional encouragement. But perhaps most meaningfully, Marcus had witnessed how his story continued to inspire acts of kindness throughout the community. People shared stories of helping strangers, of giving when they had little to spare, of choosing compassion over indifference. The ripple effects of that $8 gift continued to spread, creating waves of generosity that touched countless lives. On the anniversary of the day he had helped Sarah, Marcus returned to the library steps where his story had begun. He carried with him a small envelope containing $8, not his last $8 this time, but a symbolic reminder of how much could grow from a simple act of kindness. As he sat on those familiar steps, Marcus reflected on the incredible journey that had brought him from homelessness to hope, from isolation to community, from despair to joy. He thought about the 300 angels who had appeared in his life, and about all the other angels walking around the world, waiting for their moment to show kindness to a stranger. The sun was setting over Portland, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and gold. Somewhere in the city, Marcus knew someone was facing their darkest moment, just as he once had. And somewhere else, someone was preparing to offer a helping hand, just as Sarah had needed and he had been able to provide. The circle of kindness continued, unbroken and eternal, proving that sometimes the smallest gifts create the greatest miracles.